Get higher, baby. Get higher, baby. Get higher, girl. Hey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Knights of the Pageless Library. We are a little podcast dedicated to reviewing audiobooks. I am Bo Knight, and with me, as always, is Ryan Knight. And today we are taking a look at Doctor Sleep, the follow-up to The Shining by Stephen King, read by Will Patton.
Yeah, and this one shows right on here, series The Shining.
Which, it's so odd to me, because it's like,
Yeah.
it's not a book series. It's not like Harry Potter.
Right, yeah, book 2 of 2.
Yeah. It's getting a little zealous there, Stephen King. It's not like
Yeah,
you don't
well.
have enough books, dude.
Who knows if that's his fault or if that's just, when they put it on the internet, that's how they do it.
I have a feeling it's not his fault.
Yeah, same with maybe the cover for the Audible one. Anyways, sorry, getting off topic here. Yeah, if you guys have anything to say about this book or any other book we've covered or any book you'd like us to cover, please feel free to email us. kotpl.pod@gmail.com is the easiest way to get a hold of us. And the only thing we would ask of you guys to do right now is if you like what we do or you don't like what we do, just leave a rating. 1 star, 5 stars, whatever you feel like we deserve.
Yeah, or you can just email us anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be about audiobooks either. You can just be like
Absolutely.
saying hi. We would love that.
Yeah, for sure. Don't be shy. Yeah, so let's get into this one. So, let's see. This book is very new, right? This one just came out.
It came out in 2013.
Just kidding. That's right. See, I shouldn't have been looking at movie stuff.
The show did come out. Not the show. The movie came out in 2019.
A couple years ago.
This was written and published in 2013.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it's been out for a while. And
I thought it was new, but it's not.
Looks like the book and the audiobook came out at the same time, 2013. Yeah. So again, this one's by Stephen King. Pretty sure most people have heard of Stephen King. He only has, let's see, I was hoping it'd show me how many titles he has just on Audible alone, but it looks like there's too many. It won't show them all.
I think I looked the other day and he has like 67 books.
On Audible?
No, just total.
Total?
And I don't think that's counting his pen name that he was using for a while.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, either way, people have heard of him. People know what he's known for. I mean, he's pretty much the king of horror.
Was that a pun? Get out of here.
Yeah, it was a terrible one, but yes. However, I mean, yeah, let's leave it at that. That's kind of what Stephen King's known for is horror in general. Although he does not just write horror books. I mean, I think most people, when they think of Stephen King, think of horror novels, but that's definitely not all he writes. So let's definitely not pigeonhole him for sure. So what do you think about Will Patton in this one as the narrator?
I mean, he's great. It was a little jarring because I listened to The Shining right before listening to this.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to do because it's a different narrator between books. But I think he does like a fantastic job, especially with like all the female characters. Like he does a really good job voicing them, I think.
Yeah. I thought
he
Will
has
Patton
a really
was
wide
really good
range
for sure
that he can do.
Yeah, I think he does a really good job. I think he's a really good fit for this book as well.
Yeah, me too.
I think he fits the tone of this book super well, and I think he carries that through to each character individually, which is great.
Well, they all sound so good. Oh man, like what his friend that he works with, he's like Dano. The way he talks, is so good. They all sound really unique.
The accent and stuff he puts on, yeah, all of that sounds really good. Yeah, and this is definitely not Will Patton's first rodeo. Will Patton has almost 150 books he's narrated on Audible. So
he won an award for this one too.
Yeah, definitely top tier narrator for sure. So a very good fit for this one. So yeah, let's get into the details of this book. What would you say the genre is of this book?
It's like a sci-fi horror. but I put
Yeah.
like an asterisk next to horror.
I would probably do the same. I think
And
this
much
one,
more emphasis on the sci-fi in this one than in The Shining.
sure, and a lot less on like the weird and mystery type of stuff than in the first one. This one's much
Yeah.
more straightforward, I felt like.
Yeah, it is. It kind of spells it out what's really happening.
Yeah, which I mean, looking back now makes sense because this is our main character coming to grips with these things that were happening to him before. Therefore, it should make more sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
So this book is pretty long. This is not for the faint of heart. This one's almost 19 hours, so pretty decent listen.
Super long. I think The Shining is only 12.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's a big difference. Well, I'm seeing The Shining is almost 16 actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So The Shining's actually pretty long too. Yeah, definitely these couple books though, not for the faint of heart. Not for a new listener, I definitely wouldn't say.
No. This is expert. Most of Stephen King's stuff is.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll get to that in a minute. So this one is actually included, right? With your premium, or did we have to buy this one?
Oh, we had to buy it.
Okay. For some reason, it's saying right here included with Premium Plus for Audible. Weird.
Remember, because you can't buy audiobooks through the Apple Store anymore, so I had to get a hold of you to buy it.
That's right. That's right. Either way, okay. So I guess you could get this with your free Audible trial, or you could pay $34.99 for this one, which you're getting a lot of book here for that price. But we've talked about this before. You're better off, either having Plus and getting tokens every month, or just buying a token and using the token to get the book.
Yeah, because I think the tokens are $15.99. I think
something like that, or yeah, I'm sure you can get them on sale sometimes for like $10 a piece or whatever. But yeah, either way, I don't know if I would just flat out pay $35 for it. Okay, now the big questions: is this one easy to follow?
I would say for like a noob of Stephen King's books, no.
Okay.
But I did not have a lot of trouble following along with this one.
Right.
I felt it pretty easy to just keep it in my ears and be doing other stuff.
Yeah, I actually feel the same way. I think this is much easier to follow than The Shining was.
To its detriment, though.
Did I say that out loud? Whoa, spoilers. I think this one was much easier to follow. Like
it's
I said, there's a lot
story.
Yeah, and there's a lot less kind of left in the open. Like you said, it's much more spelled out. Whereas The Shining was pretty much a sci-fi mystery type of thing almost.
But to me, like The Shining doesn't even really feel that sci-fi though. Like yes, there are elements to that.
I don't necessarily know if sci-fi is the right word.
I don't know what else to call it. It's just like fiction.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe just fiction. Yeah, more like a fiction mystery. With what's going on. But
all those things that happen in The Shining, like, feel kind of believable to me. And I know someone's like, you realize like the hotel comes to life, right? Like, shh, I'm not listening to you right now. But like it feels very real. I don't know. But this one does not feel real at all.
This is a bit more, and dare I say, it's almost more openly fantastical, if that makes sense.
That is a really good way to put it. Instead of being subtle, it is like front and center banging a drum.
Yeah, for sure. And whereas like in The Shining, what happens at the Overlook is kind of like, well, this book kind of trounces that, but it's more of like an isolated incident. In this book, it's almost like this stuff happens on a daily basis to potentially a lot of people.
Right, which okay, I'm sorry.
We'll
I'm
get into it.
overstepping. I'm overstepping.
Yeah, we'll get into it. We kind of already covered it, but this one is. Do you think this one's easy to listen to? You said you could listen to this one while you're doing other stuff.
Oh, for me, the first time I listened to it, I almost could not put it down. I stayed up until 2 a.m. on accident listening to it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I thought this one was definitely easier to listen to as far as like if I was doing other stuff. I definitely had this one in quite a bit while I was working out in the shop and things like that, and much easier than like if I did the same thing with The Shining, because with The Shining, I felt like there was a lot of times where I was like, wait a second, what's happening? And I'd have to rewind it. Whereas this, I maybe had to do that once.
Well, no spoilers, but The Shining was written in when Stephen King was still a raging alcoholic.
Okay.
I mean, he talks about that a little bit in this. But like I think that kind of shines through a little bit of like how sporadic The Shining is.
Yes.
And
yeah,
how fragmented things are.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. I love The Shining. But this one is much more like each part stays very well in its lane.
Yeah. This one feels much more planned out. Whereas, like you said, The Shining feels more like someone simply writing their thoughts as they come to them and publishing that. You know what I mean? Much less of like, wait a second, now I got to go back and redraft all that. It doesn't make sense. Whereas this is much more feels like he probably redrafted it a lot and made it much more streamlined, I feel like.
Yeah. And I love The Shining though. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, not taking anything away from The Shining at all. Okay, so let's see. Obviously, you said the first time you listened to it. How many times did you listen to it?
2.5.
2.5. Okay. I only listened to it once, so I'll be upfront about that. But I definitely would listen to this again. I do think this one is worth listening to again.
It's so on my first blush, I love this book. I finished it in 2 days. I could not put it down.
Yeah,
like that first
fast.
time I started listening to it, I just had it playing, in bed, and I was like, oh, whenever I get tired, I'll turn it off. Next thing I know, it's like 2 a.m. and I'm like sitting up in my bed, just listening to it, like wanting to know what's going to happen.
Nice.
But the second time around, I feel like the shine has kind of come off the apple a lot, and the horror just doesn't stand up when you know like where it's going, and
Sure.
and you know what certain characters are capable of. I feel like all the horror just kind of disappears.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
And it almost becomes like a superhero origin story.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Which for Stephen King is super odd for him to write something like that.
I think that too, again, trying not to, no spoilers or anything, but even if you go back and listen to The Shining again, I feel like each time you listen to The Shining, you're going to pick up on more and more details. It's one of those.
For sure.
It's one of those kind of things. And no matter how many times you listen to it, some of the mysteries are still mysteries. Whereas in this, like you said, that's very much not the case. Like most of the stuff is very well wrapped up by the end.
And even to me, it kind of chips away at the mystery that The Shining had.
Sure.
Because like it's like the main thing is quantified.
Yes.
And I don't know how much I like that. And I think it's kind of telling of like the two places that Stephen King was at in his life where he wrote these books, of like how much different the final product ends up being.
Sure. So just to be fair though, to Stephen King, so he was only 30 when he wrote The Shining. Okay. So it was written in 1977. So you got to think about also how much time has passed in between books. Like he's probably in, like you said, a much different place when he wrote this book too.
Yeah. I'm not saying this book is bad. I don't know. It's not scary. It's just not.
Right. Well, with that, what's your like bottom line recommendation on this one?
I would say listen to this. It's good. It is good, but like if you are like a diehard fan of the Shining book, not the movie, I would definitely check this out. But it still it leaves me with like a little bit more to be desired.
Okay.
And I guess if you're like a raging alcoholic, you probably should listen to this because it might help you.
Yeah.
Is that wrong to say, you think?
No, that's probably a fair thing to say.
Because I like this book, but I don't know if I could say that I love it.
Okay.
Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I would say that's fair. I mean, I really like this one. I would definitely say also, I would recommend people listen to this. Do you think this could stand on its own if someone hadn't listened to The Shining?
Yeah.
I think
I would
so
almost
too.
say it's better, probably.
Yeah,
if you
I would.
hadn't
Yeah.
listened to Shining.
Maybe you would be better off if you hadn't listened to The Shining to go ahead and listen to this, simply because then, yeah, you won't go for the two very drastically different books, basically. But I mean, I would still recommend this pretty much to anyone. I don't think this is one that I would say stay away from by any means.
No,
I really
not,
liked this book.
It's not bad.
And there's a lot of stuff I really like in this book. So that's definitely a recommendation from me. Again, though, I will say probably don't pick this up as like your first audiobook ever. I don't know if I would recommend that.
Start with Harry Potter, let's be real.
Yeah. Start where we started pretty much. But no, this even though it's relatively easy to follow and easy to listen to, and the story is much more straightforward, there is quite a bit of jumping around. There's a lot of different characters. We get a lot of perspectives. So those kind of things make keeping it straight a little more difficult, I would say, if you're not used to that kind of stuff. And, somebody who's maybe listening to a book for the first time, that might be a little jarring. So that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else before we pass the spoiler wall and talk about this?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. So for anybody who's new here, we're going to go ahead and pass the spoiler wall. Here's your warning. We're going to go ahead and talk about the whole book. So if you don't want to spoiled for you, then go ahead and pause this, go listen to it, and then please, when you're finished, come back here and hear what we have to say about it.
Yeah. And I think the opening of this book is actually like a masterclass of writing, because he is laying out in the very beginning exactly what's happening.
Right.
So the book opens with Doc, or Danny, he sees Mrs. Massey again, who is from The Shining. She was in room 117.
217. I can't remember now off the top of my head. That's how great of a journalist I am.
I think you might be right. It might be 217. And anyway, she's back. She killed herself in the bathtub, and she's like one of the stronger ghosts that was in the Overlook, and she's back. And so Dick Halloran, who is from The Shining as well, he's kind of like Danny's mentor about how to use his Shining. He kind of lays out for him that like ghosts are only able to stick around you because you are feeding them unintentionally with the Shining.
Sure.
And so he teaches him how to like lock her away in a lockbox in his mind, which it didn't click with me until the second time I listened to it around exactly what the true knot is, like what they are.
Well, I guess we'll have to get into that because I don't know if I understand it then.
Okay, we'll get into it more later, but just think about what cycling out does to them.
Okay, sure. Okay.
So yeah, from there we cut way forward. We cut to the part with Abra doesn't happen yet, right? Where we kind of get her growing up.
No, because we get Abra's birth first, right? Because two things happen simultaneously.
Right, because he's actually in the town when that happens.
Yeah, it's during her birth, right? Is he he has like something happen with him.
Right.
And I'm having a hard time recalling exactly what it was, but I do remember, because I was listening to this in the gym when this part comes up, because he is that when he starts writing her name in his book? Is that when it is, or is that afterwards?
That's after, but we're skipping over because I think this part's really important because it sets up like Danny's kind of like the chip on the shoulder that he carries with him for the rest of his life, essentially.
Is it at the same time when he goes on his bender and he goes to that gal's house? Is that when Abra is born? Right around that same time? Or is that way beforehand?
I think that's way beforehand.
Yeah, because Abra's not that old. So you're probably right.
So yeah, so he wakes up and he's just like absolutely hungover, and we get kind of a little bit of like a peek at his past, that he drinks to suppress the shining, because like he shines so strong that like he almost is basically able to read other people's thoughts at all times, and it can be a lot. And he went on a bender with a girl. And I love that he like goes to leave and he feels his front pocket and it's way flatter than it should be, where he was keeping all his money.
Yeah.
And he's like slowly piecing together that they went and they bought a bunch of cocaine, even though he doesn't like cocaine. But the only reason he spent that much money is because he saw the death flies. And at this part, you don't really understand what that means. But essentially, he can tell when someone is dying because they're surrounded by flies.
Yeah, like he'll see flies on their face.
But it's not always, it's not old people though. It's only people who are sick and like are like corrupted is kind of what I understood.
Yeah, or like if they are young but have like cancer or something like that, that's when it comes through to him. This is the way I understood it, because he doesn't like people who die of old age. He says he rarely ever sees it on them.
So he goes to steal from her, and she has like a huge wad of food stamps.
Yeah.
And as he goes to steal from her, her son comes out. And he reaches for the cocaine and he says "Canny," this is where the voice acting is so good.
Oh man, yeah, this part's pretty good. Like it kind of gave me chills when he say that. Because I really pictured this kid. It's supposed to be like a 2 or 3 year old with a diaper sagging down to their knees because nobody's changed it like all night. So it's just full loaded with pee and whatever else.
I think he even says loaded.
Yeah. With just like a t-shirt on too. And I could picture this kid just by the way Will Patton voices it. It's very impressive.
I mean, I don't want, there's a lot more we could talk about here, but I don't want to get in the weeds or we'll spend freaking 2 months talking about
this could end up being like a 6-hour podcast easily on this book if we get too far off track. So without getting too sidetracked, when the kid comes out and reaches for the cocaine, all Dan ends up doing is taking the cocaine and like setting it on the table higher out of the kid's reach. That's it.
And he steals $75 from her, which in his mind he thinks he was owed, and basically he's only stealing money so he can go get drunk again.
He literally says that. He's like, that could cover me for what does he say, a week if I stretch it out or something like that.
And he also, like, as he's leaving too, he steals a homeless guy's like blanket.
Yeah, because there's
out
like
of his cart.
Yeah, he just grabs it and takes it. Yeah. But those are key details to remember because they come up a lot in the book. So, especially the canny part.
Yeah, it does come up a bunch.
And that is this around the time when Abra is born? Is that where
we get the bus ride first, where he's riding on the bus, going somewhere else? This is like years later.
Yeah, I was gonna say we get a time skip though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like 10 years or something.
I don't know if it's quite 10. I think it's a little less than that. I think he's about 27.
Okay.
Because he ends up being about 42, I think, and Abra's 13.
Somewhere
so
in there.
It's close to where she's born.
Okay.
But he's like riding on the bus, and they stop at, I can't remember where this place is at, But there's this place called the Rivington House, and upstairs in one of the places, Tony waves at Dan and tells him this is the place. And so he gets off the bus, and when he gets off the bus, he sees what I imagine to be like a model train, but not like tiny, almost like the cars are like person sized, like about people tall. And
Yeah,
he
it's
just
like a
walks over and
miniature.
is like, that's cool.
Yeah, it's because it's like a miniature city, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tiny town.
Tiny town, teeny town.
Teeny town. I'm sorry, not tiny town.
Yeah, and then that's why he ends up staying there, right? Is because of that?
Well, he looks at the train, and then I don't remember this guy's name, but he's like, pretty cool, huh? Just like talks to him, and he's like, yeah, I guess. And they kind of get talking back and forth, and Dan uses his shining to kind of like know more about this than he should to kind of impress the guy. And then he asks him, he was like, could I get a job here? He's like, yeah, you could, but if you're a boozer, don't tell. I can't remember his name either.
Is that
Oh my
Billy?
God.
Is it Billy? Is
I think
Billy the boss
Billy
guy?
Billy Freeman is his friend.
Oh, just his friend.
That's the guy that he's talking to by the train. Oh my God, what is his name? Anyway, he's like, dude, if you're a boozer, don't tell him. Like, he's really big into AA. So he goes and he lies to him essentially so he can get like a job there for a couple months. And then it's the next day, right? He like buys 2 bottles of wine, and he's like sitting outside to like go to work. He like opens the wine, thinks better about it, closes it, opens it again, closes it, opens it again, closes it. And then about this time, like the boss comes up to him and just takes that, throws it away, and like immediately tells him that like you have to go to AA. He's like super strict about it too. Like, you have to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And if you don't do this, I won't employ you. I won't have anything to do with you anymore. Like, you'll basically be out on your ass.
Yeah,
And-
because he says you have to go and you have to write it all down. You have to go to 90 meetings in 90 days and record it for me. And because he basically says if he falls off the wagon, he will fire him. He'll put him out on his ass. He will not help him anymore.
And he's also staying with a lady that this guy knows, and he will make sure that he can't stay there anymore.
Yeah, basically he'll get him tossed out of town.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean Dan's job there basically, right? Because now we get a little bit of what he does there, but he's basically just he helps out around the grounds, right?
Yeah, he's just like a groundskeeper.
Yeah, but is the main reason he came to this town because they had an opening at the
Rivington House?
Yeah, is that why he's there,
No,
or
he
is
was
that
just passing through? He was just
that's
on
right?
the bus.
Okay, yeah,
And
and then he got
only
off
got
because
off
of the
the
teeny
bus.
town.
Well, he only got off the bus because of Tony told him this is the place.
Oh yeah, okay, that's right. And okay, is this where we jump over to when Abra's born? Because I know we get this is where I'm gonna get. This is the only reason I'm gonna have a hard time keeping it straight. Is like I said in the beginning, there are a lot of perspective changes. And now I can't remember. Do we jump over to Abra or do we jump over to
I think
Rose?
the next. Oh shit!
It's
No, we get
it's not
Snake
even
by
Rose.
Andy.
I was gonna say it's Andy, right? Yeah, Snake
Yeah,
Bite.
Snake by Andy.
Yeah.
So yeah, we
that's
jump
right.
over to this other girl who was raped by her father a bunch, so she hates men. So she also has like not necessarily the Shining, as this book kind of lays out. Like the Shining takes many different forms. Like her power is she can make people go to sleep, and so she takes dudes to the movie theater, makes them go to sleep, robs them, and then like cuts them with 2 like marks to make it look like they got bit by a snake
On their cheek also.
Yeah, like
so they
right on their
cannot
face.
hide it. Yeah. So it will scar their face because she also like the way she picks up the guys is like at the bar. So she knows their intent is kind of malicious. So those are
Yeah.
the guys she does it to. But the important part that happens here is while she's at the theater with her latest victim, we get the perspective that there's people behind her. I think 3 people behind her watching her do this. One of them saying he's seen her do it several times.
It's Grandpa Flick.
Is it Grandpa Flick that says it at that point? Okay.
And
Yeah.
Barry
So
the Chink is there too.
yeah, I was gonna say, and I think it's Barry and then Rose, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, Rose is there. And Rose, the hat, as Snakebite Annie is doing this, she approaches her right after she puts the guy to sleep, because they're like the only ones in the theater. And basically, Andy tries to use her powers against Rose, but she
just tries to turn around.
Yeah.
And it feels like two hands have like grabbed onto her brain.
Yeah, inside of her head. And they like jerk her face back looking forward, and she cannot move her head. So this is where we get the first like inclination that Rose also, well, do we know at this point that it is Rose who's doing that, or do you not quite get it yet?
It doesn't say.
Yeah, so it could be any one of these three. And basically at this point, Rose asks Andy to join them, and she says she will either join them or she will die doing it, basically.
Yeah, and the way they bury the lead here about what the true knot is kind of confusing to me, because we miss out on a lot of Rose explaining to Snakebite Andy what's going to happen.
Yeah, and because all we know is they're looking for people with things like Andy has. We don't necessarily know what, but that's all we get in the beginning. And then I think from here we finish out.
Well, they do the turning.
Finish Andy. Yeah, I was gonna say we finished this little bit of storyline with Andy, right?
Well, they turn her.
Yeah.
Which do you understand what they are now?
No. Okay, you go ahead and explain it to me fully, because I guess I don't get it.
They're ghosts.
They are.
Yeah, that's why they have.
That's why they cycle.
Because they cycle out. They stop existing.
They cycle.
They have
out
to
of
take
existence.
in the steam to continue to have a form.
Is that also why they can like, basically also why Rose can like leave her physical body and go other places?
That is just because she has such good shining, because Abra can do that too.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and I guess Danny can too. So yeah, that makes sense. But so you think they are just ghosts?
I'm pretty sure that's what they're ghosts. Okay. And they are just running off the essence of the shining people. Because I think that's why he lays it out in the beginning. Is like the ghosts feed off the shining, but they've just taken it one step further and like actually are taking all of the shining from people. To be able to sustain themselves.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that would make sense. I mean, it would make sense too, especially that they are, because they also, we get to find out later, like some of these people are like 200 years old or more.
I think Rose might be like 1,000.
Yeah, so basically they are immortal as long as they're getting the steam. So that would make sense that they're basically already dead unless they sustain themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That would make sense. But yeah, so we finished the bit with Snakebite Andy. She gets turned during this ceremony. We get a glimpse of her phasing in and out of existence. Like her body goes translucent, then goes solid again, translucent, solid. And apparently during these ceremonies, sometimes people just go translucent and they don't come back. And if that's the case, they weren't strong enough to be turned.
I think part of it too is like them like fighting the steam, because like she feels the pain that they were inflicting on the boy or girl, whoever they got the steam from first.
Yeah,
she feels that.
We should also mention too that I don't know if they say the name at this point, but the true knot, which is what these people are. Okay, so we're
the true knot and we endure.
Right. Yeah. Okay. When she brings Snakebite Andy back, we should mention too that they're like in a like RV park with a bunch of freaking
homes.
Yeah, and they're not like, I picture like a bunch of freaking old busted ass motorhomes too. They're not even like top of the line brand new stuff.
Well,
They're like,
Rose's is supposed to be one of the nicest motorhomes in the world.
well, it's
It's
like, yeah,
based on
and
a
it's
real
gigantic.
model.
Yeah. But I'm for the rest of them, like it's basically the way they hide in plain sight is because they look just like a bunch of people who travel around the country in their motorhomes,
Yeah.
visiting sites, basically. Um, yeah, so that's how they kind of blend in with society, essentially. And like you said, basically what they do is they travel around, they look for people with the shining, especially younger people with the shining, and they have to steal that steam from them to sustain themselves in life.
Well, I think the older they get, like the harder it is to get the steam out. Is like the vibe I get.
Okay, that would make sense. Yeah, because they're trying to find, usually, at least the bits that we get, they're finding younger kids to try to basically they kidnap them and then they take the steam from them.
Yeah, they torture them first.
Yeah,
They
because
have
the
to. They have to.
fear,
The fear. Yeah, the fear makes it more potent.
right? So I think after the snake bite Andy part is when we get Abra's birth, right?
Yeah.
And when Abra is born, it's shortly after, though, it like jumps, it does a couple jump cuts because Abra is born, and then we get a few jump cuts later to 9/11, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically that night, Abra, as like a super, super young baby, wakes up just screaming, just crying, screaming. They can't get her stopped. Her parents can't get her stopped. So they call her Momo, her grandma comes over. And even she can't get her to stop, which is very strange, even at this point in her life. Usually her Momo can fix most problems that she has. They call the doctor. Doctor tells them kind of what to do. None of it helps. And the next, it would be what, that very next morning is when 9/11 happens in this story. So the planes hit the towers, and right after it all happens, goes down, Abra immediately quits crying and goes right back to sleep.
Yeah. I want to say she also is like has the numbers of the flights written on herself.
It's
in like blood.
I think her dad dreams that in his dream he sees her with like, yeah, it's like the flight number or some number is written in blood that night while she's like crying or right before she starts crying. Same with her mom. Her mom also has visions of like a crash of some kind, car crash or whatever. Basically, we know as the listener later on that this is Abra's shining coming through very, very early, and it's almost like spilling out to other people around her because it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And we follow Abra for a little while here. We get her a little bit of her backstory, right? As she's growing up, the things she went through, the birthday party, right?
It shifts to the doctor's perspective where they're telling him about all the weird stuff that happens.
Oh, that's right, because he wants to witness it. That's right.
Right. Well, they're just trying to explain to her, and like the only one I like, I mean, there's lots of weird stuff like she can change the TV channels and stuff like that. But I like when she's little and she's like, "Mom, mun," and she like moves the dresser and she like darts back there and like grabs a $20 bill.
Yeah. Yeah, and then she's like, "My man,"
yeah,
because she found it. Yeah, that's right. So they explained that she, so stuff like that, she can find stuff. And this is only when she's very, very little. So it's very strange for her to be able to do that. They hear random music coming from the house sometimes.
Oh yeah, the piano. I forgot about that.
Yeah, even though the piano is like not playing. Like you said, all the channels sometimes were showing the same exact TV show on every single channel, no matter what they did.
Yeah.
That's right. So they explain all this to the doctor, and these are things that have happened while Abra has been growing up. And this doctor basically says he needs to witness something if he's going to believe any of this.
Well, they want to invite him to the birthday party just because they think something might happen because she's going to be excited.
Right. So at this birthday party, there's a clown there who's doing tricks, and
which I know we can't camp out on this, But I love the way that the clown's described as like wearing like a zoot suit and all that stuff. Like it's great. It's great. Check it out.
And while he is doing these tricks and things, Abra basically says, she's like, I can do that with spoons or something. Like she says something along the lines of spoons.
He does a magic trick with spoons. I feel like
where he makes him
hangs it off.
He hangs him off his nose, yeah, and his cheeks and his ears, right?
Yeah, and everyone's like, Abby can do that too.
Right. And so at this point, everything seems fine because it's funny. I like the clown too, how he's like, that's great, kid. And then he just like moves on.
Well, and they describe him like sweating profusely because he's like he put on like a 5-star show for these kids.
Yeah. So basically, though, nothing happens during that. However, when they go back in the house, we see that like in the kitchen, their cutlery drawer or their silverware drawer has come open, and like a bunch of the silverware is everywhere except the spoons are all hanging from the ceiling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Abra did all that stuff with her mind, basically, from the yard. She wasn't even in the house. And so the doctor sees all this and he's like, okay, it's 100% real. I believe you, everything you've told me.
Right.
And the doctor will come up later too in the story. He's actually a very important character.
He's also an alcoholic.
Yeah. And then so now I think we go back to Danny, right?
Yeah, and we've skipped over some stuff, but so he has basically carved out an existence for himself as an orderly at this Rivington house, which is like a hospice care. So it's like taking care of old people as they die. And he has become known as Dr. Sleep. So he is able to like help people pass on. Essentially, he's able to like kind of like use his shining to like ease that transition into the afterlife.
Right. What's the cat's name before I forget to ask?
Oh man.
Why can't I think of it? It's a very unique name.
It's almost like Abra.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's similar to Abra.
Keep talking. Let me think.
Okay. Either way, okay. So there's a cat at the Rivington house as well, that visits patients. Azzy. Okay. Yep. Oh, because it's Azriel, right?
Mm-hmm. But
it's Azriel, but they call him Azzy. Yeah. Okay. So Azzy, the cat, visits the rooms, and they said Azzy is never wrong. Basically, if he's in somebody's room, that means they're probably only gonna survive the night, if even that. So basically what Danny has started doing is after Azriel visits somebody, Danny goes in there and then the cat leaves. And basically the cat's never wrong. Danny figures
he's not, just to be clear, he's not like going in there and putting a pillow over their face like, go to sleep. But that's not what he's doing.
No, basically when he goes in there, he talks to them and he might, talk them through it. They get out some of their last feelings and he just basically hangs out with them until they finally pass. And usually once they pass, he waits for a little while and he usually will end up seeing like a sort of red mist rise out of their mouth. And then that's how he knows they're dead. Like that's when he goes, he makes the phone calls and he tells them that, this person is dead. He also gets in a fight with one of the nurses, right?
Yeah, but hang on, we need to backtrack a little bit because before that is when he meets Abra for the first time, in like her ghost piano form.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that he has like some visitations in his room, right?
Well, no, I can't remember the guy's name, but it's the same guy that has the bruises on his arms from that guy. He's sitting there after helping him pass on, and he looks up and he's like, your name's Abra, isn't it? And then like piano plays. Yeah. He hears like a flute of piano music play, and then like the presence leaves. But then you're right, he goes and he freaking gets, because like the guy had leukemia. So I'm sure some of you know this. I didn't know this, that leukemia people bruise super easily, and he had bruises on his forearm. But like Danny knew that the person that did that was trying to hurt him, and that just pisses him off.
Right, especially because it's like a juiced up biker looking dude nurse. So he, Danny's basically like, what, you're gonna be a tough guy against somebody who has leukemia?
I love that
and
he's
is dying?
leaning back in his chair and he kicks the chair out from under him.
Yeah, to make him fall. Yeah. Yeah, and we should mention too that like Danny's not like he ain't like a strapping dude in this.
No.
He's just an average guy as far as I can tell. He doesn't really do anything to keep himself in shape. He just is an average looking dude. And like I said, this guy's like a juiced up biker dude is the way they kind of describe him. I just like that they square off, and basically Danny makes this guy stand down just by saying, you know, if you ever do something like this again, I will kill you. I promise.
Yeah, I
like
will kill you. Yeah.
yeah, he like scares the shit out of him. And again, Will Patton shines through on this because as he's saying it, I was like listening. I'm like, oh damn, even I feel intimidated.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty good. And the only reason that I mentioned this and hang up on it a little bit is it's just important to establish like where Danny's at now as a character versus where he was. Because when he was an alcoholic and drinking all the time, he would have fought this guy on the spot. Just like didn't matter what was going to happen. He would have gotten a fight with him just for the sake of getting in a fight with him. But he restrains himself at this point.
He got that mean streak from his dad where he just likes to fight.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so that's right. I forgot about the Abra part of this, that first death. That's right.
And I think the next day he has, which this always, if I was him, would just piss me off. He has a whiteboard with all the patients' like rooms kind of laid out on it, like a map essentially, and it's all erased, and it just has hello with a smiley face.
Yeah.
If I was him, I would be like, you couldn't have done something else.
Right. Yeah, that is funny. But at this point, he doesn't know what that's from, right? He doesn't make the connection yet, right? That it's Abra.
He thinks it's from Abra, but he doesn't know for sure.
Yeah, and it's right after this too that when he's going to his meetings, he starts writing her name in his book. Right?
And that already happened. You were right. That happens when she's
she's born? Okay, yeah, because I knew there was
Abra in his book.
Yeah, I knew there was a connection between her being born and him. I just couldn't remember exactly how it went down. But I think that is it, because he goes to his AA meetings way before she's born, or not way before. When she's born, they're AA.
Like concurrently happening.
Yeah. Anyways, let's see.
So the next thing that happens, we cut back to the True Knot, and we kind of get like more about their backstory, but Ryan already kind of explained that they're like going around in these motorhomes, essentially just picking up the kids with the Shining, torturing them, collecting their steam so they can live. And we get to witness one of these things happening to this boy who plays baseball. And while this is happening to this boy, Abra actually like leaves her body and watches them do it. Yeah. Rose notices, but I don't think Rose can do anything about it. And Abra tells, he doesn't even know her yet, but she writes on his blackboard, "They're killing the baseball boy."
Yeah. And it's an important distinction too, because Rose notices Abra's presence there simply based on how powerful Abra's Shining is.
Right.
Because supposedly this baseball kid was powerful. So we should mention too that they fill canisters that look kind of like how do they describe them? Like a
bug spray.
It's something like that. It's this little can.
I kind of imagine like what you would put like your CO2 in for your paintball gun.
See, I was thinking they were bigger than that, but something like that. Yeah. And we should just say that like this kid, they thought he would fill like, I don't know, 1 or 2 cans because he's powerful, or maybe a little more than that. But after Rose feels how powerful Abra is, she's like, this girl would fill 12 cans on her own, basically. Because remind me too, after Rose notices her presence, she tries to get access to her mind, right? Is this that point?
Doesn't happen quite yet.
Okay.
It's a little bit later.
Okay. And so after we get this True Knot killing this kid, and this is sort of where the story draws Abra and Danny together.
Well, hang on, but we should say that the boy, he had measles.
Oh yeah, that is an important detail. You're right. And it's important because they take the steam right away, though, right? Because they're all starving.
Right, but they even like the way that Stephen King lays this out of like him scratching at his arm.
Yeah.
Like it's all the details are there. I was just too stupid to pick up on them.
See, and maybe I didn't remember because I only listened to it once. But yeah, now that you mention it, yeah, okay. Yeah, that is an important detail though, because we find out that because Rose even mentions too that it shouldn't be a big deal because they call regular people rubes, and she says that we can't get rube diseases. However,
we're jumping ahead a little bit, but I think that's okay. We could stick with the True Knot for a second.
Yeah.
So one of them just cycles out and dies without anything like major happening to them, and that's like unheard of.
And this is shortly after they took steam from that kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he just starts cycling and dies almost at random.
Yeah.
Which Rose is like, she can't believe it because she's like, this doesn't happen to us. Like, we don't just die randomly, and we don't get sick.
Yeah, we don't get rube sicknesses. It just doesn't happen.
But is this when they find out that that's what actually happened?
Yeah, because they have a doctor, because they like before he like fully cycles out, they find out that he has measles.
Yeah.
And yeah, they kind of put the pieces together that, oh, the baseball boy must have had it. And then so they don't know what to do about it yet. They kind of think like, oh, well, maybe he was just weak. Maybe we just need to take more steam and it'll go away. And at this time, I think Abra's about 12 or 13. She's checking the mail, and she sees like one of those things of like, have you seen me, that has a bunch of missing kids on it, and the baseball boy's on it.
Yeah, that's right.
And so she takes it up into her room, and she does some like, God, what's that called? Like remote viewing?
Yeah, kinda. Yeah.
Where she like essentially can like, through the picture as like a vocal point, can like see the last moments of this kid's life. And she sees what they did to him. And she sees that one of the people put on the baseball glove for a couple seconds and took it off. Yeah, but then she keeps following that thread, and she's able to get into Rose's mind on accident. She didn't mean to, but she kind of just did it. And Rose gets to see through her eyes for like a couple seconds. But Rose tries to see, and then like that just pisses Abra off, and she's like, no. And she like admits so much force that it like creates an earthquake.
Yeah, it creates an earthquake where Abra is located, and it also throws Rose from her mind.
Yeah, it like from her mind and like back into hers with like such force that she almost falls down in the supermarket.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is when she really finds out how powerful Abra truly is. And then so now, obviously, all Rose is concerned with is finding Abra so that they can take Abra's steam because of how powerful she is. She basically says they can't. And
because
actually,
of how powerful she is, and because Abra has been inoculated against measles, and they think that will protect them.
Right. And they also, Rose thinks that this time with Abra, because she's so powerful, they might try to keep her and continuously take steam from
her
never
instead
gets
of killing her. On.
No, it doesn't. But that's sort of because of the way I think the events come together. Basically, Rose doesn't have a choice because of the way things play out. She doesn't have a choice but to try to just end it.
Right.
At least that's kind of the way I see why it doesn't get followed up on. Yeah, so now the wheels have kind of been set in motion that Rose is going to start looking for Abra. So Abra now needs help, but she can't really go to anybody except she knows she can talk to Danny using like the whiteboard and stuff. But now she has to meet Danny.
Right, which I like. I like this angle of being like, yeah, it's pretty creepy for like an old guy to be meeting a young girl.
Yeah, yeah, and they end up meeting like at the library, right?
Mhm.
They set it up to meet at the library, and yeah, Danny's like, he's freaking out because he's just like, if anybody sees me meeting with a 12-year-old girl, like I'm going to prison.
Yeah.
So they play it off as if Danny is Abra's uncle. That's why they're hanging out together, basically. And yeah, basically too, right? The next thing that has to happen is they are going to try to find Rose before Rose finds Abra,
Well,
because
Abra knows where the baseball glove is, and if
exactly,
she can get a hold of it, she can find where the true knot is.
right. And so she needs Danny and somebody else. Well, she leaves it up to Danny. Danny has to find this glove for her, and if he can do that, then Abra can find the true knot and lead them right to, like, lead Danny or the police or whoever to the true knot instead of allowing them to come to Abra. So Danny agrees to this, that he's going to go find the glove, and he tells Abra, you have to set some sort of alarm. If this lady is able to access your mind, you have to set an alarm. And I love this part. So
It is pretty cool.
basically what happens is Rose takes a bunch of steam because she's going to meditate. And what she's going to try to do is access Abra's mind while she's sleeping so that Abra will have no way of knowing this. And what she's looking for, right, is she's trying to find where Abra lives exactly, right? So I like that they describe it as like when Rose gets there, like, because Rose's mind, right, is a bunch of like filing cabinets, right?
Right.
But Abra's mind is much more like whimsical and like mystical, like a forest setting type of thing. And I like that Rose, she does this and she sneaks in, and she is there filing cabinets in there too? There is, right? Because she shuts her hand in one.
Well, I see, the way I picture it is she's just trying to slip her hand into the drawer that is Abra's mind.
Okay, sure. But I thought like they physically view it as like a filing cabinet is what it looks like. And inside are the files, which are the mind, like the memories or currently memories, whatever you want to call it. Because it physically slams her, well, physically where she is in her mind, I guess. But her fingers get stuck in it. And I love that detail. I love that it slams so hard on her hand. It holds her hand in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then while this happens, basically this thing slams on her hand and like an alarm sounds because this was Abra's trap. However, Abra took it one step further than Danny thought she should. And instead of just setting off the alarm and then kicking Rose out of her mind, Abra shows up like on a freaking horse in her mind.
Mm-hmm.
And she's in like decked out full armor and she has a spear and she's going to try to kill Rose inside her mind. It's kind of intense. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. So Rose just ends up bailing, but her hand in real life is all fucked up.
Is actually hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the two fingers that got caught are like missing the fingernails and all scraped. Like she really would have like pulled her hand from the drawer. Like, it's pretty cool.
Which we do find out that like Rose is powerful because even though she has a hard time while she's in Abra's mind, she rebels against it enough to like frighten Abra's horse to where she can't land the spear.
Mm-hmm.
And once Rose escapes and realizes her hand is physically hurt, she's like, wow, if she had stabbed me with the spear, I probably would die.
Mm-hmm.
So now she's like, obviously I can't do that again because it's dangerous. And is that the point when Abra sees into Rose's mind too, right? Because they're in the wheel at that point, right?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think the only time she actually goes into her head is in the supermarket.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
I mean, her and Danny do some of the wheel stuff.
Okay.
But I don't think she does it with Rose, unless maybe part of the end. The end is a little confusing to me.
Sure.
Maybe that happens at the end a little bit.
Okay. Okay. So basically now, Danny also has to get a couple people involved in this, right? So he gets Billy, the guy who he worked with, right, when he first got to Teeny Town.
Mhm.
And then he also gets the doctor, Abra's doctor, involved because Billy has a slight amount of shining, right?
Yeah, a glimmer.
And he gets the doctor involved because he also has a glimmer, as well as he knows what Abra is capable of. And he knows, basically, Danny says, because you know what Abra can do, you can trust me. Like, Abra trusts me, therefore you can trust me, essentially. And then Danny also does some, like, tells the doctor some stuff from his past that Danny would have no way of knowing to prove that he can also, like, he also has abilities.
Well, and he's always kind of like downplaying too, like how powerful
he is. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. This is when he also shows the AA notebook to Billy to show him that he wrote Abra's name down.
Abra's name like freaking like 12, 13 years ago.
Yeah, basically he knew something about that girl from the moment she was born. He just didn't know what it was. So they go with him to dig up the baseball kid. They do this and they get the glove and they bring it back to Abra, who, after she puts it on, right, she can tell that Barry wore it. And then after that, she can figure out exactly where Barry is located.
She can see through his eyes whenever she wants.
She can connect to him. Right. Yeah.
But and he's not Barry. The chink is not strong enough to notice her.
No, and we should mention that too, that in the True Knot, they're not all like Rose. Like they're not all whatever you want to call Rose, psychic or whatever you want to call her. Some of them have very minor abilities. Like they call some of them finders.
Well,
and that's
it
simply
seems
because
like the people in the True Knot all have one ability and Rose has everything.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good way to describe it. Because they call some of them like finders, and basically those are people who simply can sense people with the shining, and that's it. They can't do anything else with it.
Can't do anything else. Yeah.
But yeah, so we should mention that Barry is not able to do that at all. Like he's a finder, right? That's what he is.
Yeah, he is a finder. It's him, Rose, and Grandpa Flick are the three.
And Grandpa Flick were the three most powerful ones they had. Yeah. And then the only other person who's like is of real mention during the whole story is Crow Daddy.
Crow Daddy.
Yeah. Which he honestly seems like a terrifying individual. And
oh yeah, he's pretty scary.
I mean, I would have liked to see, I haven't seen the movie of this. I would like to see how he is portrayed, because I feel like it would be wrong no matter what they do.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. For the sole reason that, like, this guy, and again, this goes along with the narrator, but this guy just gives me the willies every time they talk about him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and he's not even like a huge character in this, to be honest. Like
I mean, he gets a bit like an act.
Yeah, but I mean, overall, his impact, I think, is much more than what he actually does in the book to me.
Yeah.
So at the same time, when they get the baseball glove to Abra, right, is when the True Knot also comes up with a plan to get Abra, to kidnap her.
Right. And they don't actually use like just straight up like internet sleuthing to kind of figure out,
right,
okay, so there was like this really isolated earthquake. There are these 3 girls about this age. And so they kind of like narrow it down from there. And at this time too, Grandpa Flick dies. So they lose one of their finders. He dies from the measles.
Yeah,
And Barry the Chink is starting to show that he has measles too. But they kind of like assemble a group to go and get Abra and bring her back.
Yeah, and what their plan is, Crow Daddy's plan, right, is he's also going to send sedatives, right? Wasn't that his idea, was to send sedatives to the area?
Right, yeah, that they're mailed there so they can pick them up. So they can basically keep her like psychically numb, so she can't
Yeah.
overpower them.
Right. And the only way they can find her too is because when Rose glimpsed into Abra's mind, she saw mountains, a mountain range. So they come up with a way, because they have Jimmy numbers, right?
Yes, that's his name.
And Jimmy comes up with a bunch of pictures, and he's like, okay, these are like all the mountain ranges as viewed from different directions.
She saw part of a store. I can't remember what it's
Oh,
called. They
yeah,
call it
yeah,
the
yeah.
Lucky Spliff, but it's called something else.
Yeah, that's right.
And so he like,
or it's the lickety
spliff, right?
Yeah. Which are only in a specific part of the country. That's right.
So so he took pictures of those places and like the ones with mountain ranges, and they narrowed it
behind
down
it.
that way.
Yeah, that's right. So they basically narrowed down to 3 girls. It's like Abra and then 2 other girls around her age in the same area. And their sleuthing is pretty good because not only is Abra included, but one of the other girls is like one of Abra's really close friends too. And yeah, so then their plan is they're gonna, and I don't remember exactly why they're gonna mail. Why do they mail the sedatives? I don't remember.
Because they don't have them, and they want to pick them up on the way.
Okay. So they basically like order them to be where they're going to be instead of ordering them to themselves. Okay, yeah, because they want to be traveling constantly because they're in their RVs. That's right. And at the time that this happens, right, the True Knot is around Colorado, right?
Yeah,
but Danny and Abra are in like New Hampshire on the East Coast, so it's like a super long drive, obviously, to get there in their freaking RVs. Right. So that's another reason too. I'm sure that they want to send the sedatives ahead of themselves so they can travel while those arrive. That's right, because there's a whole bit about it being traced through the mail and whatnot.
Right.
But yeah, so basically both sides kind of set their plans in motion at the same time, right? But Abra finds out that the True Knot are on their way there. So now instead of
Barry's eyes.
Right. So now instead of going to find the True Knot, they know the True Knot is coming to find them. So now they basically come up with a plan to ambush them where they are and let the True Knot come to them. And this is when, right, because Abra knows that Rose can access her mind, this is where she comes up with the plan, right, to switch places with Danny mentally, right?
Yeah. But basically, Danny is like impersonating her psychic signal.
Yeah, and it's kind of bizarre and kind of hard to follow.
Super confusing.
Because they basically...
Super confusing.
Yeah, because they basically switch minds or switch bodies, however you want to look at it. So Danny's body is carrying Abra's signal. So that way Rose is tracking Danny, even though it feels to Rose like it's Abra.
Yeah.
And Abra is literally in Danny's body and Danny is literally in her body. Because like, it's just funny too. Like when Abra talks in Danny's body, his voice is all like high pitched and stuff. It's very good. But it is very confusing too. This is one part where the story I was kind of like, wait, what is going on?
Yeah.
So they use this tactic to ambush the True Knot. Basically, Billy and Danny and her dad, Abra's dad. Yeah, they go. And I honestly can't remember the exact details of where they go or how they do it. It's in a park or something, right? They go to Teeny Town. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Because Dan's driving the train.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, because Barry, who is not a very strong finder, he's like, oh, yeah, they're by some kind of tiny train. That's right.
But he is sick as a dog at this point.
Yeah.
I love the part where he's talking to Crow Daddy and he's like, get with me, Crow Daddy. I love that.
Yeah. That's right. Basically, though, the True Knot sends Crow Daddy, though, splits off at this point, right?
Right, because he can tell, even though he's not very like psychically strong, he can just tell that something is off.
because he says that he's like, it's too easy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what his inclination is because he's like, this is too easy. We're finding them too easy and all this. Yeah, he basically thinks it's far too easy. And I don't think Billy's with Danny because I think Billy is with
You're
Abra.
right.
Billy was left to.
He's with the doctor and Abra's dad.
That's right. Yeah. And
You're right,
basically,
'cause Billy has been like Abra's like chaperone, like shadowing her to make sure nothing happens to her.
yeah,
for a
and we should
while.
mention Billy is like in his like 70s. He's like
super old.
yeah, he's a pretty old guy, and I only bring that up because it's going to come up towards the end. And basically, so everybody in the True Knot except Crow Daddy.
Not everybody.
Finds,
it's just that group.
or yeah, sorry. This group that they dispatched. They find Danny and the doctor and her dad, and the True Knot proceeds to show me how inept they are because these three dudes just freak. There's like 4 or 5 from the True Knot, so it's not like a ton, but they proceed to just like
6 of them without Crow Daddy.
One of them
total.
is Snakebite Andy.
Mhm.
Annie or Andy? I can't remember.
I think it's
Anyway.
Andy.
Okay. She is there though. She's part of that group. Because they think obviously her ability would be good in case somebody else is there. She can just put them to sleep. And which she almost manages to do, right? On Danny.
Yeah.
But she proceeds to get shot in the fucking face.
Well, that's not what stops her. What stops her is Abra screaming in Dan's head, "I don't see the crow. Where's the crow?"
Yeah, okay. You're right. That's
But
right.
You're right. He's like, "Whoa," and then she gets blasted. Yeah.
Yeah. We should mention too that, like you said, Abra can pretty much see through Dan's eyes whenever she wants also. So she's kind of watching all that happens there, and that you're right. She notices that Crow Daddy's missing. And yeah, I just think that part's freaking brutal though when Snakebite is like putting Danny to sleep and just gets shot like in the jaw, and it doesn't kill her. Oh, it's brutal. Yeah, so they basically kick the freaking True Knot's ass right here.
Yeah, they kill all of them, and they all cycle out and leave nothing but their clothes.
Right. So there's no real crime because yeah, they all just disappear. So they're if that's what you're thinking, like, oh well, they're gonna get in trouble for shooting people. No, they literally cycle out and they disappear. Yeah, they just go away. But Crow, during all of this, Crow manages to go straight to Abra's house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he finds Billy, right?
Yeah.
Because he finds him in the truck, right?
Yeah.
And he freaking
Crow's like power is just like being super charming.
Right. Yeah, because he manages to approach him and he freaking sticks him with the sedative, right?
Right.
Puts him to sleep.
He even just says, he's like, "Excuse me, sir, I'm lost." And he's like, "That was enough." And he is able to like stick him with the sedative and knock him out.
Yeah. And then he shoves him into the passenger seat. And he gets into the house with Abra, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole point of this too, oh, that's right. I forgot to mention that Abra was supposed to be at a friend's house during all of this, right?
Yeah, but she decided to stop.
She decided to leave her friend's house. And the whole point of her being obviously at her friend's house was to keep her safe during this. However, she left because she thought it was endangering her friend's family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she couldn't concentrate because while she was trying to like watch Danny's mind and stuff like that, the girl and the girl's mom, whose house she was at, were like, they're trying to like play cards and do all this other weird shit. Yeah, that's right. So Abra couldn't focus. So she eventually left, and that's why she ends up at home alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Crow gets into the house, and Crow manages to stick her with the sedative too.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of just a badass. Like he's one of those kind of characters where things just work out for him, is what it seems like to me.
Do they though?
Well, at this point they have. So Crow kidnaps Abra and takes Abra and Billy in the truck, right? And leaves.
Yeah, in Billy's truck.
In Billy's truck. And I don't exactly remember where they go.
Well, they're trying to make their way back to Colorado.
Yeah.
And Abra is trying like this whole time to reach out to Dan, but she can't because like the sedative is purposely like psychically suppressing her.
Yeah.
And then they go to a gas station. She fills the car up with gas, and then she's like, "Yo, I'm having my period. I gotta go to the bathroom." And she's able to like get just enough of a signal to Dan to like talk to him, and they do the wheel things so where they essentially just like switch bodies again.
Yeah.
And so Dan is in her body where he's not psychically suppressed at all. He's fine, and he's able to like overpower Crow, and they freaking kill Crow.
Yeah, that's right. They do. Yeah. I forgot how. Yeah, you're right.
Which this part is kind of confusing because it's like at least the first time I listened to it, I was like, wait, what's happening? I don't fully understand. They essentially like switch minds.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Because when it happens too, Dan's body then like goes limp, like he like almost passes
he like goes
out.
limp and like is like drunk, and they're like carrying him like like a drunk guy where his like feet are dangling.
Yeah, that's right. Which is a cool detail though, that they switch minds, so it like sharpens Abra back up. That's right. So they managed to kill Crow, and then at this point, right, Rose reaches out because she knows that all of them have been killed.
Yeah, she can feel when each person of the True Knot is killed.
Right. So basically Rose, her last ditch, right, is that she threatens that obviously she's not going to stop until she says she's going to kill Abra and her whole family if Abra doesn't come to Colorado and give herself up, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, they tell Danny comes up with a plan and basically tells Abra to agree to it, and says
actually Abra sets the terms. She calls her and
that's
sets the terms.
You're right.
Also, at this point, sorry, go ahead.
I can't remember now though. Why do they agree to it if they just basically killed half of the True Knot? Is that why though? Is because Rose threatens them and says she's not going to stop?
No, Abra calls her, tells her they know where they are, which we skipped over that like Dick Halloran comes back in one of the people that Dan is like letting go. And he tells them like, they're in your past. And he kind of figures out, they're at the old Overlook. They're at the Overlook.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Also,
that's right, because now Abra wants to just go take care of Rose to get rid of her.
She's kind of like bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
But before they meet with Abra again, Dan actually meets up with her Momo, and she's dying of like pancreatic cancer. And as she's dying, which is something I didn't understand the first time I listened to this, as she's dying, he collects the essence that she had, like all that poisoned essence on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially making himself sick. But
that's right.
Abra calls Rose and is
he collects it in one of his boxes too, right?
Well, yeah,
on his shelf
in his head.
Yeah.
yeah. But he even says like it's a leaky box. It's getting out. That's why he starts seeing the death flies on himself.
Mm-hmm.
But Abra calls Rose and is like, "This is just going to be you and me. I want it one-on-one." Which Rose is like, "Perfect. You won't have any help. And I want you to keep all the True Knot in one place," which again, Rose is like, perfect, because if they're all together, they're easier for me to psychically steal from them. Like you're stacking the deck in my favor here.
Yeah.
That's the only reason that Rose agrees.
Yeah, and the plan is then it will just be Abra and her uncle, quote unquote, will be the only two people who come to where Rose is. And so Dan knows that they're at the old Overlook Hotel site where the hotel burned down.
Mm-hmm.
So what they end up doing is they have Billy go in the truck with a mannequin, right, to the location. And this is where the book starts getting a little confusing to me, because Danny can like go to the Overlook the way he remembers it, sort of. Like, I didn't 100% get this part, what happens here at the very end.
What do you mean?
So is he really at the Overlook, or
Yeah,
is he
he's
like
there
in his mind?
No, he's there. So
Yeah, but the Overlook burned
he's-
down.
I know, but there's like a campground there, and they're all like in the lodge house because
Okay.
he sneaks away, and he gets to all of them, and he lets Momo's essence out, which they all take in, which essentially gives them all pancreatic cancer, and they all immediately die. Are you talking about the part like after this where they are in his room at the Overlook, where they're in the in between
Yes.
place?
Yes, that was the part that really had me confused.
So that, like, I don't know, that to me is just like is like his mind palace essentially is like where they are.
So
Like,
this is like
in-between
Rose.
place before they turn the wheel fully.
It's like
and
Rose's
switch
filing
places.
cabinet room, right?
Yeah, exactly. But
Um,
he's showing it to Abra.
Okay, yeah. Because it's where they can meet, right? In the middle when they switch
Yeah.
minds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
okay.
before they can turn the wheel fully.
But it does look like the Overlook, right?
It does-
Like
it
it
does
looks
look
like
like
the
the
room from the Overlook. Okay,
Mhm.
that's what I remember. And that's why I was confused, because I forgot about that. It's when they switch minds that they see that. Okay. Yeah, okay. So Abra Billy, right, goes there by himself, right? With the mannequin.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean Danny's around, but he's not.
Yeah.
He's not like right there.
And the only other thing to remember too is that Rose has, I can't remember the other lady's
Silent
name.
Sari.
Yeah,
She
Silent
can't really
Sari. Yeah.
talk.
She tells her to wait, and if Rose gives a specific signal, Sari is in the shed with like a sickle, a hand sickle. And if Sari doesn't move, she's pretty much invisible to everyone. That's her ability. And Rose says, if I give the signal, you come out and you kill, whoever's there, basically. So that's just a detail that I remember from when they're that Rose sets up before they get there. And then when Billy shows up, right, they have the mannequin in the front seat, but Rose can feel Abra's presence. She knows Abra is approaching the Overlook, but it's in Danny's body again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't fully remember the details of how this like final act goes down, because this is where it is a little confusing to me.
They like mentally fight, and Abra's too strong on her own to for even this far away from herself is like too strong for Rose to kill. So Rose like tricks Dan into thinking that like Abra's consciousness is Rose, and so he like starts choking her.
Oh yeah, when that's right after they leave, right? Rose goes in. Is it in Danny's mind that she does that?
Yeah.
Yeah, like she makes Danny think that Abra is Rose.
Yeah,
and
so
like
choking like essentially like Abra's like psychic essence.
Yeah, but it's also her physical body, right?
It is also her physical body. Yeah, like the same thing with like the drawer and the hand thing. Like basically, this mental is they're so strong that these things are real.
Right. Exactly.
But Abra's able to like untrick him, and then she calls for Silent Sari to come out, but Dan had already let one of the ghosts in his head out
from the past.
Yeah, one of the people from the Overlook, and he kills Silent Sari is how I take that.
Yeah, he kills her, which that is one of the few parts in this book that is not spelled out as
not really
100%.
He just says great party, isn't it? And Silent Sari screams, and that's it.
Yeah, and she's just gone. Yeah, from the story. So basically, Rose has no help at that point. Because is it before that Dan lets Momo out too. Momo's essence out.
Yeah,
Or it's
that already happened.
that's right. Yeah, that ends up killing all of the rest of them.
He
It like poisons
like
them all.
while they're in the truck, he like walks up behind them and does that.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. And then he goes up and does he doesn't physically go up after Rose though, right? He runs the truck into the overlook because there's like a big platform, right? Up high. It's like a lookout platform. And he runs the truck into it, right? And that confuses Rose just long enough for Abra to like psychically push her off of it, right?
I think so.
I think so too. That's what I say. I can't.
I don't remember
quite
him running the truck.
He definitely runs the truck into it. I do remember that because he's also trying to figure out how he's going to explain it because
Oh yeah, that's right.
yeah, obviously he just wrecked because he's like, oh, he told me we couldn't make it up here and I told him I could drive straight up it and he runs into it. Yeah, but ends up knocking Rose off, right? And she falls all the way to the ground, which I'm assuming she was up like 100 feet or something like that on this big tall. I kind of imagine like a fire watch tower type thing. And she hits the ground and she immediately starts to cycle because she falls on her fucking head. So, and it kills her. But her hat is still there, which this is like her calling card because she's Rose the Hat and it's like a top hat, right? And she always wears it crooked on her head. And after I like that she lands on her head and her head's at a weird angle and Danny just notices. He's like, oh, it's like the way she wears her hat. Her head's all crooked. But I do like the detail too, that after all that goes down, Rose is like, you have to burn the hat because I'm assuming there's some of Rose's essence in this thing because it was so attached to her. So. That's what I assumed. And that's the only way to fully get rid of her is to burn the hat and any memory of her.
And they burn the hat and it like instantly disappears. It like turns to dust because it's actually super, super old.
Yeah. And that's kind of it. We should also mention too that Danny really is Abra's uncle, right?
Yeah. Which was kind of weird to me.
I didn't like that.
Out of left field. I was like,
yeah.
What?
I didn't like that. I especially didn't like that it doesn't come up till almost the very, very end.
And it almost doesn't matter anyway.
Right. Yeah. It is worth mentioning though, because Abra's mom, right, is Danny's sister.
Yeah.
Sort of. And yeah, I mean, is there really anything else in the story?
There is like a follow-up where Abra's a little bit older and she gets in trouble for like drinking at a party and Dan just like warns her to be careful.
Yeah. I mean, and that's pretty much it. This one's very much so. I mean, The Shining was very much so open and shut too. Like it didn't necessarily need a sequel, in my opinion. But I did read a thing that a lot of people said, like, well, what happens to Danny when he grows up? Like, yeah. And then also in the author's note at the end, Stephen King mentions that, right? That so many people were asking him, well, what happens to Danny after all that's over?
To that kid from The Shining.
Yeah. And this is however many years later that he decided to write it. But I do like the author's note that he talks about that it was basically something that was on his mind pretty much since he had finished The Shining. Like what did happen to those characters. So I did think that was kind of cool. And then what did you mention? He says in the author's note about the movie.
Yeah. Because he says he's like, I'm known for like The Shining is known as like one of my scariest books. And people always remember the Stanley Kubrick movie as being scary for reasons that make no sense to me.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's pretty great.
I agree. Come after me. The Shining movie's terrible.
Right. Yeah.
It's a classic.
Like I said, I haven't seen the Dr. Sleep movie that came out a couple of years ago, but I'd be curious to see that and maybe compare it to this book because I'm curious how they would follow up I'm assuming they have to base Doctor Sleep on the previous movie. Otherwise, it really won't make sense to anyone.
Yeah, I guess. I just never even thought about that.
Well, and since the Shining movie, did not follow the book necessarily very well, I'll be curious to see how this movie is able to even follow the book at all. Because,
Yeah.
the Shining movie wasn't really about Danny.
No,
I mean,
really
and
wasn't.
the book, Danny had a much bigger part in the book than he does in the movie, but that's the point. It's called The Shining because Danny is the one who shines. So,
Right. Yeah, the movie is much more about like his dad and the fact that he was like always a part of the hotel. It's I don't know. The movie's weird.
the movie, I think the movie just kind of misses the point, but it's classic. But yeah, so
It's a horror classic if you've never seen another movie in your life.
nice. Yeah. So you got anything else on this one?
No, I feel like I've probably been talking for long enough.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's been a long time. And if anybody's still with us, we really appreciate it. We really appreciate anybody who listens to any amount of stuff that we've put out. That's awesome.
Yeah, we do appreciate it. Especially if somebody's still here like, I like these guys. I appreciate you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so if you guys have anything to say about this book, or like I said, any other book, or just anything in general, please feel free to email us. kotpl.pod@gmail.com is the easiest place to do that. Yeah, with that, do we know what we're doing next? I don't think we do.
That's kind of why I was dancing around it, because I don't think we've talked about it yet. I don't even think we have a clue.
We haven't even talked about it yet. So you know what?
This episode, like where we're recording this, it's not going to come out for like 2 weeks still.
Yeah. So we'll just leave it open. It's almost the new year, so we'll decide in 2022 soon enough what we're gonna do. And yeah, just keep an eye out for us. Something will be coming in the future. So
yeah.
we just haven't picked it yet, so that's why I don't exactly know. But yeah, you got anything else on this one?
No, I've already said this, but thank you all for listening. It really means a lot to us.
Yeah. So what do you think? With that, we will catch you guys in the next one.